Howdy my totally tubular gamers. We're back with another video. It's very dark in here, but you know what? Let's get to it.
So today we're going to be doing something a little different. We're going to be ranking every 2D Prince of Persia game from worst to best. Now, Prince of Persia isn't exactly a series that needs an introduction, but what a lot of people fail to remember is that the series originally got started as a 2D series, before eventually jumping to 3D, becoming mainstream, and one of the most recognizable series of the 2000s. And over the years, there's actually been a number of 2D titles in the Prince of Persia franchise, and so for today's video, I really thought it would be fun to take a look at all the 2D games. I ranked all of the 3D games, so I thought to myself, with the release of the Rogue Prince of Persia, why not take a look at the 2D games? So with that, we're going to be going from worst to best, seeing which games are worth playing, which ones are absolutely worth your time, which ones should you skip and stay far away from, and which games might fall in the middle. You'll find out here. We're going to be ranking these games based off of their playability, their quality, how well they hold up, etc, etc. So with that, please like, share, comment, subscribe. I got the Patreon and the super thanks and memberships. Any support is truly, and I mean truly, greatly appreciated. Seriously, thank you all so very much. And again, I have ranked all of the 3D games. If you came to this video looking for the 3D games, I'll leave a link in the description for the 3D games. But yeah, let's move on. What's the worst 2D game in the entire Prince of Persia series? Well, here we got Battles of Prince of Persia, releasing for the DS in 2005. While it might not be a 2D platformer, I would still consider this a 2D game, and it's easily the worst Prince of Persia game ever made. It's actually a spin-off that takes place in between Sands of Time and Warrior Within, and this game was supposed to bridge the gap between the two titles and explain why the prince was more cynical, violent, and had longer hair. There's a war that gets started, the Dejct is still after the prince. There's absolutely potential here for a really good story. Unfortunately, the game just kinda shits the bed. It's not horribly offensive, it's just a very underwhelming story with some predictable elements and uninspired writing. What is horribly offensive is this gameplay. Really, the rest of the game. So it is a turn-based tactics game, and it's straight up maybe the worst turn-based tactics game I've ever played. I haven't played a ton of games in this genre, but I have dabbled in like Advance Wars, and that series was pretty cool. This game, though, is the opposite of cool. I don't really have anything nice to say about it. The game just kind of falls apart in every single category. The presentation is awful. It is so lifeless. It is so flat and basic. Visually, this game has nothing going on for it. The units are literally just colors, and when character models do show up, they're so blurry and cheap looking that it just drags the entire presentation into the toilet. And then the game has frame rate issues. Yes, really. I don't care that this was an early DS title. This looks awful, and it plays terribly also. It's so slow, dull, bland, and it ultimately failed to engage me. This was not a totally tubular time. I wanted to stop playing this game minutes after I started it. It just felt so tedious. It also has a card system, an overly complicated card system. Like, what is even going on here? The gameplay was not satisfying. I didn't have any of those aha moments where I do anything cool. I was just like, wow, I'm bored pretty much immediately. Please, can I play any other Prince of Persia game? And I think that in itself tells you how I truly feel about this one. It's not just a bad 2D game, it's just a bad game. And so here we have Prince of Persia: The Fallen King, releasing for the DS in 2008. This one is interesting. It's a spin-off of the 2008 Prince of Persia reboot. It actually takes place after the epilogue DLC, which saw the main antagonist just kind of running rampant and infecting all the land. So it sees the prince trying to stop him with newcomer Zhao, our latest companion. The story is interesting. I mean, I guess it's interesting. It takes place after the 2008 game. And it's interesting to see what this series could have become if Ubisoft actually continued with it, but they didn't. So this game's story, characters, and world is just kind of an anomaly now. The prince also seems like a completely different character, like he just lost all of his edge. Didn't really care for him or the story. I didn't really care for the gameplay either. On the surface, it's actually a pretty good idea, and it's something that the series would return to. It's a 2D platformer with some Metroidvania elements. But this game unfortunately has two crippling issues: the controls and the level design. The controls are horrible in this game. So with this being a DS game, they really wanted to utilize the DS's touchscreen, so you do everything with it. Might I remind you, this is a 2D platformer. It is as bad as it sounds. It's unwieldy, it's clunky, it's imprecise, it doesn't ever feel nice. I don't really have a good thing to say about it or its mother. It all sucks. but even if the controls were good, this game still wouldn't be, because the level design is the most generic, bland, uninspired level design you will find in a 2D platformer on the DS. The Prince of Persia series actually has some really good level design to it. Even the lesser 2D and 3D games have pretty decent to good level design. This game though, no, it is some of the most dull level design of the entire series. It arguably has the worst in the entire franchise. There's just nothing special here. It's boring, it's bland, it repeats itself a lot, it doesn't seem to have an original bone in its body, and even when it's at its very, very best, it's still not very good. Yes, the game has Metroidvania elements where you get an ability, then they want you to go back and use said ability, but I feel like I'm gassing this game up too much by even saying it has Metroidvania elements. It's just so basic. Like, who is this game for? Is it for small baby children? Wah wah wah? Goo goo gaga, Prince of Persia? Like, who is this for? I'm not sure. The level design isn't good. Overall, the game doesn't play nice, it doesn't flow nice, it doesn't have good controls, the level design isn't worth speaking of, the presentation's pretty basic. Yeah, this one really should be forgotten. Like how Ubisoft forgot about the 2008 reboot, and I definitely do not recommend it. And so here we have the original Prince of Persia, yes, the OG, releasing initially in 1989. It was originally released for the Apple II, but the version I'm actually the most familiar with is the Super Nintendo version. And so that's the version you're going to be seeing today. I know there are plenty of people who think this version is absolute dog shit and you should stick to the original, but hey, all these years later, this really is the version that I have the most experience with. So when Prince of Persia originally came out, it was pretty ahead of its time. This setting had never really been seen before in a video game, and it was a very different type of 2D platformer. And that's because it was a cinematic 2D platformer. The game takes place in medieval Persia, and you control the unnamed protagonist, the prince I guess, and you must venture through a series of dungeons to defeat the evil Grand Vizier and save the princess. Not the most complex story, but it'll do. Now, about 10 seconds ago I mentioned that this game is a cinematic 2D platformer. Now, for the unfamiliar, what that means is that it's very fluid and realistic with its movements and platforming. You see, most platformers at the time were very similar to Mario, where you just kind of you jump super high into the air, you land on the platform, and that's really it. You don't really think twice about it. Here, it's all, again, very realistic. The movement and platforming is very heavy in comparison to something like Mario. You don't jump at some crazy high length. It's actually very realistic with how far and high you can jump, and you'll frequently have to pull yourself up. It's not as simple as just jumping from platform to platformer. There really is more here, and it takes a bit of time to get used to the heavy controls and realistic feeling and how, like, just turning around isn't instantaneous. Another game that came out a few years later was Another World that is very similar to how this game feels. It takes a bit to get used to, but eventually you will get used to it, and it does feel very nice, and it's got a good gameplay loop. Really, what the gameplay sees is you trying to get past all of these various traps and fight off several swordsmen. You actually have a timer for the entire game, and so the game has an incredibly fast pace, as the timer's always ticking down here. It does not stop. The game is relentless, and it's actually incredibly challenging. And I will just say immediately, this game is seriously not messing around. This is old school hard. You're gonna have to play this game several times over and learn the layouts of these levels to get through them incredibly fast. And at first I was like, sheesh man, this game is not messing around. This isn't all that fun. I'm just dying and not going fast enough. But eventually, after a bit of time, everything clicked and everything really came together. Started going through these levels faster, started knowing where all the traps are, really understanding the level design, which is quite good. And before you know it, you're able to get through all these traps, no problem. You know exactly where to jump. You can fight off all the guards super fast, and it becomes incredibly rewarding and satisfying. This is actually a very rewarding experience that, again, really will reward you if you put the time in to understand its mechanics, level design, and know where to go. It is a challenging, punishing game at times, but it really does reward you, and it really gives you a sense of accomplishment by getting past these levels, going through the game fast enough, and there's a reason this game is still a classic nowadays. The game has an excellent rhythm and pace to it. It feels great once you get used to it. The level design is solid, and it's incredibly satisfying. It's one of those games that I think anybody that likes 2D platformers should at least try out. It's very different from most 2D platformers, as it is a cinematic 2D platformer, but I think it's totally worth trying. You might like it, you might not. At the end of the day, we can all agree that it was the start of an excellent franchise. Like I mentioned earlier, there are numerous versions of this game. There was actually a remake in the mid-2000s in the vein of Sands of Time, so I'm just throwing that in here as well. It doesn't really matter too much which version you play. I think they're all good. Some versions are probably better than others, but in the end, it's a certified classic. And so here we have Prince of Persia 2, The Shadow and the Flame, releasing initially for DOS in '93, but like the first game, it's been ported to several other platforms, and I've played mostly the Super Nintendo version. The game is a direct sequel to the original, with the prince trying to return to Persia to defeat the evil vizier once and for all. Now when it comes to the gameplay, as you can see, it is very similar to the original Prince of Persia game. It is a cinematic 2D platformer that is incredibly difficult and has realistic movement and animation. It will see you dodging tons upon tons of traps. You'll be jumping, climbing, swinging, crawling. You'll be going all over the place to avoid these traps, and of course fighting plenty of enemies. Like the first game, you are under a very strict time limit to beat this game, meaning it has a blisteringly fast pace like the first game, and if you had like a good rhythm with that first game, you're going to need it for the second game, because it really isn't messing around. It is just as relentless and difficult as the first game, and you're going to be trying over and over and over. The level design, in my opinion, is slightly better than the first games. It's a little more varied and engaging. You will fight a ton of enemies in this game, way more than you did in the original game. In the original game, you fought max one enemy. It really was one enemy at a time, and I thought the combat was alright. Here, they're really not messing around. You'll fight 2, 3, sometimes 4 enemies at a time that are all trying to whoop your ass, and the combat, while challenging, I think it still is decent here. When it comes to the controls and the feel of this game, I think it's slightly better than the original. Not like way better. Maybe that's because I came off of the first game and was prepared to die and retry a bunch of times, but I thought it felt nicer overall. I think the game still has a great flow and rhythm to it, and it was a very enjoyable experience. I would say this game is better than the first game, actually. It looks great, it has good music, it feels nice, it has a good pace to it. It doesn't have the longest runtime, but you'll be retrying it so many times that it doesn't really matter. And like the first game, it is a very replayable experience, especially once it becomes super satisfying and fun to just absolutely blast through this game. Yeah, it's a good time. I think it's a very solid cinematic 2D platformer, one of the best in the whole genre, and I have no problem recommending the game to people who like cinematic platformers, challenging 2D platformers, or maybe you wanted to see where Prince of Persia really got its roots along with the first game. Then yeah, you should totally play this. The game was not re-released as many times as the first game, but it still is relatively accessible nowadays, and I think it's kind of crazy with how well the original 2 Prince of Persias hold up. Like, they're good games even nowadays, which really is a true testament to just how good these games were back in the day. They were good then, they're good now. I expect them really to be good forever at this point, but I've said enough. If you're interested in 2D platformers, this very well might be the game for you. I had a blast with it when I wasn't going to throw my controller. And so here we have the Rogue Prince of Persia officially leaving early access and hitting 1.0 status in 2025. This was developed by Evil Empire, the people that made the hit indie sensation Dead Cells, or at least the people that are still there. And going into this one, I was very intrigued. This is new territory for the Prince of Persia series, but I feel like it could be pretty cool. I tried it once in early access and was just kind of iffy on it, but have put a fair amount of time into the 1.0 release, and I gotta say, this game's actually pretty good. When it comes to this game's story, it sees a version of the prince that we haven't seen before, and it sees the prince going up against the Hun army, who sends a bunch of possessed soldiers to destroy the city, and so it's up to the prince to stop this. And of course, because it's a roguelike, every time he dies, he comes back to life. There's actually a fair amount of story to this game with a number of different characters, and the game surprisingly fleshes things out. There's more here than you might expect. And while I'm not going to act like it absolutely blew my mind, it's not fucking Grapes of Wrath, it's pretty decent, especially for a Prince of Persia game, and I wanted to see where things would go at least, and I think this is a decent incarnation of the prince. Something you'll probably notice immediately is the game's visuals. It actually looks totally different from how it did in early access, going for a different art style and dropping the purple, but I think this new 1.0 paint actually looks pretty nice. I like the cell shading, the game is very fluid, and while it's not visually stunning, it has a good little aesthetic to it, and the music is actually pretty good also. It goes kinda crazy at times, but all of that wouldn't matter if the moment-to-moment gameplay and controls aren't good. Thankfully, that's not the case. So this is a 2D platformer that mixes Prince of Persia's moveset with that of a roguelike. All of the levels are randomly generated, and every time you die, it's going to be different, as you would expect for a roguelike, but there are a number of things that will carry over from playthrough to playthrough, meaning that you're always making progress and always getting stronger. When it comes to this game's controls, it actually feels really nice. It's intuitive, it's smooth, it's quick to understand, and I never had any problem with it. I feel like if the controls or the physics or the handling sucked, it would just kind of cripple the entire game. Thankfully, that's not the case. We're not using the stupid fucking DS touchpad. We're playing with a controller and it feels real nice. The moveset the prince has is pretty solid also. He can run on walls in the background, he can jump over enemies, do a little dash. There's plenty of attacks, there's heavy attacks, and even a projectile. And as you get further in the game, well, other things unlock as well. The moveset and general combat isn't anything too crazy, it doesn't go nuts like Prince of Persia The Lost Crown, but it's diverse and varied enough that it'll keep you engaged throughout, and it actually allows for some pretty excellent level design. Even if it is randomly generated, there was still some good level design here. Yeah, from time to time it looks copy and pasted, as do most roguelikes, but for the most part I actually found the level design to be engaging. It's not always just move all the way to the right as well. Sometimes you have to go up and down, sometimes you even gotta go left, and it might not be as straightforward as you'd think, and this helps the game not get stale. The combat also keeps things interesting, since there's actually a pretty good enemy roster and all of them require their own little strategies to defeat. And then of course there's the bosses, and the bosses are absolutely going to kick your shit in, but I think these are a good test and are actually well done also. Of course, with this being a roguelike, the difficulty is going to be kinda all over the place. Sometimes you'll have runs where you're just decimating everything, and there'll be runs where it feels like you can't get a single fucking good thing and the game is just gonna crush you. Thankfully, in my experiences, it was more of the former rather than the latter. And what certainly helps is, like I mentioned earlier, certain things carry over from playthrough to playthrough. The prince levels up, he can get stronger, you can use a variety of different weapons and abilities, and there's just a number of things really making it feel like you're actually progressing every single run. You're not just banging your head against a wall hoping you get a good drop. No, it actually feels like you're making some progress every single time, especially if you veer off even a little bit from the main path and start doing some of the optional content or finding the other characters. This is actually pretty cool, and it adds more world building to the overall game. And something else that's pretty cool is the last thing I want to bring up for this game, its overall flow. It has a great flow to it, and the game actually rewards you for staying in a good flow. Jumping over enemies, dodging at the last minute, or doing a bunch of quick parkouring will reward you. The prince will speed up, he'll do more damage, and it just feels really nice. It actually creates some really satisfying moments and loops, and you'll want to do as much cool flippy dippy shit in a row as you possibly can, so that then you'll move faster and can whoop even more ass. All of this creates a pretty solid roguelike. I'm not going to act like this is the greatest roguelike I've ever played or one of the best roguelikes of the 2020s. I prefer Dead Cells, I prefer plenty of other roguelikes, but this game is still good. It's still a fun game where you can hop on for a run or two a day, and it's got enough obsessive qualities where you might want to actually do that. If there wasn't a million other games coming out, I'd love to put way more time into this and really get invested in its system, story, and see everything that the game has to offer. But as it stands, I've enjoyed my time with it, and I absolutely do recommend it. Especially if you're a fan of roguelikes or Prince of Persia at all, like this really does seem like a no-brainer, and I'm glad they made something like this. And then here we have Prince of Persia The Lost Crown releasing in 2024. Man, this game slaps. 10+ year hiatus for Prince of Persia, but when it comes back hard. Like, this is one of the best Metroidvanias I've ever played, straight up. It's one of the best games Ubisoft has ever made, and is arguably the best game they've made in like the last 10 years. It's that good. But what even is the premise of this game? So you don't actually play as the prince, you play as one of the prince's guards, known as the Immortals. And you play as this young warrior named Sargon, and he's tasked with, protecting the prince when all of a sudden he gets kidnapped, and it's up to you to go find the prince and save him, and that's all I'm going to say for the story. I actually quite like the story of this game. I think the setup and premise is quite good. The world is interesting. Sargon's actually a pretty good character who does have a bit of depth, and this game takes a few twists and turns I really didn't expect. The story has more going on than I anticipated, and that can only be a good thing. Now, when it comes to the gameplay, this game is very different from really any other Prince of Persia game before. It is a 2D Metroidvania. Now, I remember when this game was announced, plenty of people went, no, we want another 3D game. We don't want some basic 2D game, and I can tell you this game really is anything but that. This is actually one of the most advanced Metroidvanias I've ever seen, and I think it's a great direction for the series to continue forward, and if they choose to go in this style, which may or may not happen with the Sands of Time remake, we'll have to wait and see, but the gameplay of this game absolutely slaps. You play as Sargon, he's got a bunch of abilities. As you play through the game, you get various other abilities, and usually you find yourself exploring a map or trying to get to some location for a story reason or a new ability, and along the way there's a lot of obstacles, wildlife, traps, platforming, enemies, bosses. A lot of things are trying to stop you in this game, but Sargon, he ain't the prince, he ain't a rogue trying to stealthily kill people. No, he's a badass warrior, and you absolutely feel like it. He's got a bunch of different attacks. In fact, the combat actually is way more depth than you'd expect, and then along the way you get various abilities. When you start, you can just kind of run and jump and do a few basic sword slashes. But as you play through the game, Sargon becomes way more powerful. You can start boosting in the air, you can basically rewind time to a certain spot, and a bunch of other powers that I don't know if I can spoil or not. I will just say that Sargon's moveset greatly expands as you play through the game, and you'll be playing the game in a completely different way from how you started playing, and the game totally is ready for this and adapts to this with some of the best level design I've seen in any Metroidvania. The level design is actually really solid in this game. It's interesting, it's engaging, they're constantly throwing new obstacles and traps your way so that you're on your toes. There's a good placement of enemies. There are tons upon tons of secrets in this game. You will frequently find areas you can't access because you need a certain ability, and this game has a great feature where you can actually take an in-game screenshot and place it on the map to remember where those spots are. You don't have to try to look it up or remember where it was. No, you can literally just take like an in-game screenshot and be like, oh yeah, this place, I need this ability. You get that ability, you come back, and you can get what you were trying to get. I think that's great. I don't know why other Metroidvanias don't use this. I haven't seen this before in a game. Again, I don't play an absolute ton of Metroidvanias, so maybe it is in another game and I didn't notice, but this was new for me. I think it's a great feature. I liked exploring the map. The game's very intuitive with its map, and I honestly never felt lost in it. I was able to find my way and get where I was trying to go at any point in time, which I think is great. The navigation is solid, and then there's actually a bunch of side stuff in this game. There's more than just the main story. There's side quests, there's collectibles, equipment in the form of amulets, and permanent stat increases to Sargon, and these aren't just some cookie cutter waste of time, equipment number go up. No, this is actually helpful and meaningful and rewarding. It's great to go off the beaten path and be rewarded with a new amulet that actually makes Sargon even better. The side quests, it's not some bland, generic Ubisoft side quest either. I thought these were actually pretty decent. And the main quest is great also. This game has a fantastic flow, pace to it, and was just a joy to play through. And one of the main reasons is because of the controls and how the game feels. It feels amazing. Sargon feels great. He's fast, he's athletic, but he's also really powerful. The combat feels excellent. It's incredibly satisfying. You feel like a total badass. Again, there's actually some depth here. You can pull off some pretty cool combos, and there's plenty of different enemies that will test your abilities. There's a lot of bosses in this game as well, and yeah, it was just a great experience through and through. Like, I couldn't put this game down from when I started playing it. It just tickles my brain in a certain way that makes me want to keep playing, whether it was discovering new secrets, exploring the world, getting into some really cool fights, learning some new combos, and then just how rewarding all of it is. It's a great gameplay loop, and I think it totally holds up. The game is actually pretty long. It's easily the longest Prince of Persia game, taking twice as long as most of these games, around 20 to 25 hours, and I don't think it really overstays its welcome. It almost does. By the end of it, the backtracking was starting to get to me, but then it ends. So I mean, I guess it wasn't the biggest of deals. Presentation wise, this game looks pretty solid. Sure, it's not going to break any boundaries or be one of the best looking games of the year, but it's got a nice art style to it, and I have a feeling this game is going to age well graphically, and I think it's pretty incredible. I wouldn't just say that this is the best 2D Prince of Persia game. I would say overall this is like the best Prince of Persia game. I know a lot of people have nostalgia for a lot of the older titles, but as somebody who didn't grow up with the older titles and played them all over the last few years, yeah, I'd say Lost Crown is my favorite. And I 110% recommend this game. It gets dirt cheap already. There's been a bunch of DLC for it. It's one of Ubi's best. But that's it for today's video. Just wanted to talk some more Prince of Persia. The series really can never get enough love, and with that, we got our code word for today, love, because yeah, that's what it's going to be. I just thought of that off the top of my head. Anyway, hope you all stay safe, y'all. Bye-bye now. See ya.